I had everything a man could dream of. A beautiful wife named Sarah, 5 years of blissful marriage, and our first baby on the way after trying for so long. My career was soaring at a top marketing firm in the city. My family supported me through thick and thin. Then Jessica, my jealous coworker, decided to destroy it all with one malicious lie. Nobody believed me. Not my pregnant wife, not my parents, not my brother. Within 24 hours, I lost everything and everyone I loved. Before I share how my entire world collapsed in a single day, let me know where you are watching from and hit that subscribe button if you have ever had your trust betrayed by those closest to you. 5 years into my marriage with Sarah, life could not have been better. We had just celebrated our anniversary with a romantic weekend getaway to the mountains, where we hiked, made love under the stars, and talked for hours about our future together. The pregnancy news came just 2 weeks after that trip. After 3 years of trying multiple fertility treatments and countless disappointments, we were finally going to be parents. I still remember the moment Sarah showed me the positive test. Her hands were shaking so much she almost dropped it. I stood frozen, staring at those 2 pink lines that would change our lives forever. When it finally registered, I swept her into my arms, twirling her around our small bathroom, until we both collapsed onto the floor, laughing and crying at the same time. The first ultrasound appointment made it real. The whooshing sound of our baby's heartbeat filled the examination room strong and steady at 160 beats per minute. The technician printed several pictures for us, and I carried one in my wallet every day after that, pulling it out whenever I needed a boost of motivation at work. My parents were overjoyed about becoming grandparents. Mom immediately started knitting tiny booties and hats in gender-neutral colors, since we decided to wait until birth to find out if we were having a boy or a girl. Dad, normally stoic and reserved, teared up when we shared the news. He pulled me into a tight hug and whispered how proud he was of the man I had become. My younger brother Daniel had always looked up to me, following in my footsteps through school and even joining the same company 2 years after I started there. Though he worked in a different department, we often carpooled together, using the 30-minute drive to catch up on life and work. Daniel was the first person I told about the pregnancy outside of Sarah, and my parents swearing him to secrecy until we reached the 12-week mark. He responded by offering to help paint the nursery and build the crib when the time came. Our family dinners every Sunday were sacred traditions. My mother would spend all day preparing elaborate meals, while my father, Daniel, Sarah, and I played board games or watched sports together. These gatherings became even more special after the pregnancy announcement, with conversations constantly drifting to baby names, parenting advice, and plans for the future. I never imagined that these same people who loved me so deeply would soon turn their backs on me completely. At work, I had recently been promoted to regional marketing manager, overseeing a team of 12 talented individuals. My boss frequently commented that I was on the fast track to an executive position within the next 5 years if I maintained my performance. The promotion came with a substantial raise that allowed us to start looking at larger homes in better school districts for our growing family. Jessica had joined the company around the same time as me 6 years ago. We had both started as marketing associates, climbing the corporate ladder side by side. While I focused on building relationships and delivering consistent results, Jessica was known for her cutthroat tactics and willingness to step on others to get ahead. When I received the promotion, she had also been gunning for something changed in her. Her polite workplace demeanor transformed into thinly veiled hostility. She began questioning my decisions during team meetings, sending emails highlighting minor errors in my work to the entire department, and spreading rumors that I had received special treatment because I was friends with the executive team. I tried to maintain a professional relationship despite her behavior, believing that the best response was to continue producing excellent work rather than engaging in office politics. As Sarah approached her second trimester, complications arose with the pregnancy. Her doctor diagnosed her with hyperemesis gravidarum, a severe form of morning sickness that caused extreme nausea, vomiting, and dehydration. There were several frightening trips to the emergency room when she could not keep any food or water down for days. Each hospital visit resulted in mounting medical bills that our insurance only partially covered. To ensure we could afford the specialized care Sarah needed, I began working overtime and taking on additional projects. This meant spending more time at the office and less time at home taking care of my increasingly ill wife. Sarah never complained, but I could see the strain it put on our relationship. The sparkle in her eyes dimmed a little each time I called to say I would be home late again. Strangely, as I spent more hours at work, Jessica's attitude toward me seemed to soften. She began offering to help with my projects, bringing me coffee during late nights at the office, and asking thoughtful questions about Sarah and the baby. At the time, I interpreted this as her finally putting our professional rivalry aside, perhaps even feeling sympathy for my family situation. How naive I was. The night before everything fell apart, I sat beside Sarah on our bed, gently rubbing her swollen feet as she flipped through a baby name book. I promised her that once the baby arrived, I would scale back my hours at work and be the attentive husband and father she deserved. She smiled weakly and said she believed me. That was the last time my wife ever looked at me with love in her eyes. The business trip to Chicago was scheduled months before we knew about the pregnancy. As a regional manager, I was expected to attend the annual marketing conference, along with key members of my team, including Jessica. I tried to get out of it, explaining to my boss that Sarah was having a difficult pregnancy and needed me nearby. He sympathized, but insisted that my presence was mandatory if I wanted to maintain my trajectory toward an executive position. When I told Sarah, she immediately insisted that I should go. "It is only for 3 days," she said, placing a protective hand over her small baby bump. "Mom can stay with me while you are gone. This is important for your career, Everett, for our future." Her selflessness made me love her even more, though it also deepened my guilt about leaving. The conference itself was a blur of presentations, networking events, and team dinners. I called Sarah every night before bed, sharing funny stories about the day and assuring her that I was thinking about her constantly. During one of these calls, I mentioned that Jessica had been acting strangely, positioning herself next to me at every opportunity and finding excuses to touch my arm or shoulder during conversations. "Be careful around her," Sarah warned. "I have never trusted her. Remember how she tried to take credit for your Harrington campaign last year? I promised to keep my distance, but that proved difficult in the close quarters of the conference." During the team dinner on our final night, Jessica insisted on sitting beside me, ordering an expensive bottle of wine for the table, despite knowing I did not drink while traveling for work. When I declined a glass, she pouted dramatically. "Come on, Everett. Live a little. Your pregnant wife is not here to see." Several colleagues looked uncomfortable at her comment. I excused myself early from dinner, retreating to my hotel room, where I called Sarah again, telling her how much I missed her and that I could not wait to get home the next day. What I did not know was that while I slept that night, Jessica was busy crafting her revenge. She took photos of herself outside my hotel room door, making it appear as though she was entering or leaving at a late hour. She saved fabricated text message exchanges created with a spoofing app suggesting an ongoing affair between us. She even convinced a waitress from the restaurant to write a note on a napkin that said, "Call me when you ditch the wife," which she photographed next to my conference badge. The flight home the next morning was tense. Jessica attempted to sit next to me, but I deliberately chose a seat between 2 elderly passengers. Her expression darkened with rejection and humiliation. That should have been my warning, that something terrible was coming, but I was too focused on getting home to Sarah to notice the storm gathering around me. When I finally arrived home that afternoon, I knew immediately that something was wrong. Sarah's mother's car was in the driveway, unusual for a Thursday. The house was unnervingly quiet when I entered, calling out Sarah's name. I found her sitting at our kitchen table, eyes red and swollen from crying, her mother standing protectively behind her, with a hand on her shoulder. "How could you?" Sarah whispered, her voice breaking. "How could you do this to me? To our baby?" Confused, I set my suitcase down and moved toward her, only to have her mother step between us with a warning glare. Sarah slid her phone across the table. On the screen was a text message from Jessica expressing sympathy about having to be the one to tell her, along with several attached photos and screenshots that painted a damning but entirely fictional picture of infidelity. "This is not what it looks like," I said, the words sounding hollow, even to my own ears. Jessica made this all up. She has hated me ever since I got the promotion instead of her. You have to believe me, Sarah. But she did not. The evidence Jessica had fabricated was convincing, especially to someone already feeling vulnerable and emotional due to a difficult pregnancy. When I tried to call Jessica to confront her, the call went straight to voicemail. I later learned she had taken the day off work, making herself conveniently unavailable while my life imploded. What hurt even more than Sarah's disbelief was discovering that she had already shared everything with my family. Without giving me a chance to explain, she had called my parents and brother, sending them all the false evidence Jessica had manufactured. They were expecting us for dinner that night, she informed me coldly. They wanted to address the situation as a family. Desperate to clear my name, I agreed to go, believing that once I explained everything face to face, my family would stand by me. I could not have been more wrong. Walking into my parents' home that evening felt like entering a tribunal. My father, normally warm and welcoming, stood rigid by the fireplace, his face a mask of disappointment. My mother could not even look at me, busying herself in the kitchen, though no food was being prepared. Daniel paced the living room like a caged animal, his hands clenching and unclenching at his sides. Explain yourself, my father demanded without preamble. I tried. God, how I tried. I told them about Jessica's jealousy, her previous attempts to undermine me at work, her strange behavior during the trip. I swore on everything I held sacred that I had been faithful to Sarah, that I would never dream of betraying her or our unborn child. The pictures are faked, I insisted. The text messages are created with an app. Anyone can do that these days. Please, you have known me my entire life. Do you really think I am capable of something like this? My mother finally turned to face me, tears streaming down her cheeks. The Everett I thought I knew would never be capable of such disgusting behavior. But clearly I did not know you at all. Daniel moved so quickly I had no time to react. His fist connected with my jaw, sending me stumbling backward into the bookshelf. Family photos crashed to the floor, glass frames shattering around my feet. A fitting metaphor for what was happening to my life. You disgusting piece of trash, he spat, advancing toward me again. Sarah is carrying your child. She has been so sick, she can barely get out of bed some days, and you are off, screwing your coworker in hotel rooms. I did not fight back when he hit me again. Somewhere deep inside, I believed I deserved the pain, not for what I had been accused of, but for not protecting my family better against Jessica's malice. When my father finally pulled Daniel away, it was not to defend me, but to prevent him from wasting any more energy on someone who does not deserve it. Get out of my house, my father, said, his voice colder than I had ever heard it. You are no son of mine. My mother's next words cut deeper than Daniel's fists ever could. I have no son who would betray his pregnant wife. Do not come back here, Everett. You are dead to us. I looked to Sarah, standing silently in the corner, cradling her belly protectively. There was no love in her eyes anymore, just hurt and disgust. Without another word, I left the only family I had ever known, blood dripping from my split lip onto my shirt as I walked to my car alone. Returning to our home after being disowned by my family, I found Sarah had been busy during my absence. My clothes were piled haphazardly in suitcases by the front door. Family photos that once displayed our happy moments together were turned face down. The ultrasound picture that had been proudly displayed on the refrigerator was gone. I want you out tonight, Sarah said, her voice eerily calm. I have already called a lawyer. You will be served divorce papers tomorrow. The clinical detachment in her tone frightened me more than any anger could have. This was not a temporary emotional reaction. She had made a decision about our future with cold calculation. Still, I could not accept that 5 years of marriage and a lifetime of dreams could end so abruptly based on a lie. Sarah, please, I begged, dropping to my knees in our living room. Just give me a chance to prove this is all fabricated. Let me show you the hotel security footage. Let me get the phone records. There has to be evidence that will prove my innocence. She looked down at me, one hand protectively covering her belly. Do you know what stress does to an unborn baby, Everett? It increases the risk of miscarriage, preterm labor, and developmental issues. My doctor says my blood pressure is already dangerously high. I cannot and will not put our child at risk by prolonging this painful situation. Our child. I repeated, my voice breaking. Will I ever get to see our baby? Her expression hardened. No. You gave up that right the moment you betrayed us. I have already filed for full custody with no visitation rights based on moral character concerns. The room spun around me as the full implications of her words sank in. Not only was I losing my wife, my family, but I would never know my child. A son or daughter who would grow up believing their father had abandoned them before they were even born. I have been talking to Daniel, she continued each word. Another knife in my heart. He has been so supportive through all of this. I never realized before how different you two are. He would never hurt someone the way you have hurt me. The implication was clear, and it knocked the breath from my lungs more effectively than Daniel's punch had earlier. My brother and my wife had been developing feelings for each other, using my alleged betrayal as justification for their own. The irony was so painful it was almost laughable. I was being punished for an infidelity I never committed, while the two people I loved most in the world were already planning their future together. That night I checked into a cheap motel on the outskirts of town, using the emergency credit card I kept in my wallet. I tried calling each member of my family repeatedly, but all my calls went unanswered. By morning I discovered they had all blocked my number. The divorce papers arrived at my workplace the next day, delivered by a courier who handed them to me in front of my entire team. Jessica watched from her desk, a small, satisfied smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Within hours, whispers spread throughout the office. Colleagues who had once respected me now avoided eye contact in the hallways. 3 days later, I was called into my boss's office and informed that I was being terminated immediately. We have a zero-tolerance policy for creating a hostile work environment, he explained, sliding a severance agreement across his desk. Several employees have come forward with concerns about your behavior toward female staff members. I knew without asking that Jessica was behind the complaints. Somehow, in the span of less than a week, I had lost my wife, my unborn child, my family, and now my career. The severance check would cover maybe 2 months of motel stays and basic living expenses. After that, I would have nothing. I hired a lawyer with what little savings I had left, hoping to at least secure visitation rights to my child and contest the false accusations that were destroying my life. His assessment was bleak. The courts tend to side with the mother in these situations, especially with a newborn, he explained. Without concrete evidence disproving these allegations and with character statements from her family supporting her claims, your chances are extremely slim. As days turned into weeks, my attempts to clear my name grew increasingly desperate. I reached out to the hotel in Chicago requesting security footage that might show I had spent the nights alone in my room. They refused without a court order, which my lawyer advised would be expensive, and likely denied without more substantial evidence to justify the request. I contacted colleagues who had been on the trip, hoping someone had noticed Jessica's strange behavior and might vouch for me. Most ignored my calls. Those who did answer expressed uncomfortable sympathy, but were unwilling to get involved in what they viewed as a messy, personal situation that could jeopardize their own careers. 6 weeks after being thrown out of my home, I received a text from an old college friend who had remained neutral during the fallout. Attached was a photo that shattered what little remained of my heart. Sarah and Daniel stood side by side at what appeared to be a baby shower. My parents flanked them, beaming with pride. The caption read, "Celebrating new beginnings, and the little miracle joining our family soon." They had already replaced me, erasing my existence from the family narrative as though I had never been part of it at all. The child I had helped create, whose heartbeat I had heard during that first magical ultrasound, would grow up calling my brother Dad. 2 months later, through the same friend, I learned Sarah had given birth to a boy. They named him James Thomas, after my father and grandfather. A family name for a child who would never know his real father. That night in my dingy motel room, with its peeling wallpaper and flickering lights, I hit rock bottom. Everything I had ever loved, everything I had worked for, everything that defined who I was had been stripped away by a vindictive lie. The final blow came when I saw a social media post my friend forwarded to me. It showed Sarah, Daniel, and my parents gathered around my newborn son. The caption read, "Our perfect family complete at last." They looked happy, united in their shared belief that they were protecting this innocent child from a monster that never existed except in Jessica's fabrications. With nothing left to lose and no reason to stay, I withdrew the last of my rapidly dwindling funds, packed my single suitcase of belongings, and bought a one-way bus ticket to Seattle, as far from my old life as I could afford to go. Starting over in Seattle with nothing but $237 and a suitcase full of clothes was the hardest thing I have ever done. The first month I slept in homeless shelters while applying for any job I could find. My marketing degree and management experience meant nothing without references, especially with a sudden termination on my record. I finally found work as a night janitor at a downtown office building. The pay was barely enough for a room in a shared apartment in the worst part of the city, but it was a start. Every night as I emptied trash cans and mopped floors, I thought about the corner office I once had, the respect I once commanded, the family that once loved me. Those thoughts nearly destroyed me until I made a conscious decision to lock them away and focus only on survival. The turning point came 6 months into my new life when I met Frank, an elderly maintenance supervisor at the building where I worked. He caught me reading marketing journals during my lunch breaks and asked about my background. Something about his kind, weathered face made me share the truth, the whole painful story spilling out between bites of a cheap sandwich. Unlike everyone else, Frank believed me. "I have been around long enough to spot an honest man," he said simply, "and you, son, have honest eyes." With his encouragement, I enrolled in night classes at a local community college, studying digital marketing to update my skills. Frank introduced me to his son, who owned a small local advertising agency, and I began freelancing on weekends, building a new portfolio from scratch. Every dollar I earned beyond basic living expenses went into savings for what I called my justice fund money. I hoped would someday help me clear my name and reconnect with my child. 3 years after leaving my hometown, I had saved enough to hire a private investigator to track Jessica's career. The report revealed she had been fired from 2 subsequent positions for ethical violations. It was not proof of my innocence, but it established a pattern of behavior that aligned with my claims about her character. 5 years in, I had built enough of a client base to start my own small digital marketing consultancy, specializing in helping businesses recover from reputation damage. The irony was not lost on me, using the skills I had developed through my own personal catastrophe to help others rebuild. My business card did not use my real last name, a precaution to prevent my past from finding me before I was ready to confront it. For years, I attempted to establish legal contact with my son through family court petitions filed in my home state. Each was denied based on the original character allegations and Sarah's insistence that contact would be emotionally harmful to the child. The court consistently ruled in favor of the stable family unit she had established with Daniel, now her husband of 4 years. Through my private investigator, I occasionally received updates about my son. I learned he had my eyes and my mother's musical talent. I kept a folder of from afar photos, school achievements, and sports team listings secretly gathered for me. They were painful to look at, but impossible to discard, my only connection to the child who would never know me as his father. The therapeutic work I did during those years was as important as my professional rebuilding. A compassionate counselor helped me process the multi-layered betrayal and loss I had experienced. She guided me through the stages of grief, not just for my marriage and family relationships, but for the identity that had been stolen from me by false accusations. "You cannot control what happened to you," she would remind me during our sessions. "But you can control who you become because of it." 8 years into my new life, a chance encounter changed everything. I was presenting a workshop on crisis management at a marketing conference in Vancouver when I noticed a woman in the audience who looked hauntingly familiar. After my presentation, she approached with tears in her eyes. "You probably do not remember me," she said. "I am Amanda, Sarah's younger sister." I remembered her vaguely from family gatherings, though she had been living in Europe during most of my marriage to Sarah. She explained that she had just moved back to the States after 10 years abroad and had been catching up on family history. "I never believed you did what they accused you of," she said over coffee later that day. "Sarah has always been dramatic and easily influenced. And Jessica, your coworker. She finally got caught 3 years ago, fabricating evidence against another colleague. It was too late for you, but it confirmed what I suspected all along." Amanda shared that she had discovered old emails between Sarah and Daniel that predated the accusations against me, suggesting their relationship had begun before I was even accused of cheating. The betrayal cut deep, but the vindication of my claims offered some measure of peace. After all this time, someone from my old life finally believed me. Our friendship developed cautiously over the following months. Amanda was different from her sister, more thoughtful and less reactive. She shared stories about my son James, now 8 years old, and apparently asking questions about his real dad that made Sarah and Daniel uncomfortable. "They have told him this sanitized version where you just abandoned them," Amanda explained during one of our long phone conversations. "But he is smart, Everett. He senses there is more to the story." As Amanda and I grew closer, our friendship evolved into something deeper. We both knew the complications our relationship would create with her family. But after losing everything, once I had learned that true connection was too precious to sacrifice for fear of others' judgment. On the 10th anniversary of the day my life fell apart, I formally asked Amanda to be my partner. We moved in together in Portland, neutral territory between Seattle and my hometown, building a life that felt both healing and defiant. My business had grown into a successful agency specializing in reputation management and recovery. The skills I had developed through my own trauma became my greatest professional asset. Through Amanda, I learned that Jessica had eventually self-destructed professionally. After being fired from multiple positions for ethical violations, she had been caught red-handed fabricating evidence against another colleague at her most recent job. Her admission of previous similar behavior, including what she had done to me, came too late to salvage my old life, but provided the vindication I had sought for so long. 16 years after leaving town with nothing but a suitcase and shattered dreams, I returned as a different man. Amanda, now my wife of 2 years, stood beside me as we drove past familiar landmarks that seemed to belong to another lifetime. My son James was 16 now, nearly an adult. According to Amanda, he had been pressing his mother for the truth about me with increasing urgency. Our plan was not to disrupt their lives or seek revenge. I had long ago realized that bitterness would only destroy whatever new life I managed to build. Instead, we rented a house in town for a month, and through Amanda, let it be known that we were there if anyone wanted to talk. The confrontation, when it finally came, happened at a local coffee shop. Sarah reached out first, requesting to meet. She arrived with Daniel, both of them looking older and wearier than I remembered. The confident, self-righteous expressions they had worn when casting me out were replaced with uncertainty and something that might have been shame. "I know about Jessica," Sarah said after an uncomfortable silence. "About her being fired for doing to someone else what she did to you." I maintained my composure, years of therapy, helping me navigate this moment I had both dreaded and longed for. "It took 16 years for the truth to come out," I said quietly. 16 years of my son growing up believing his father abandoned him. Daniel could not meet my eyes. He stared into his untouched coffee as Sarah continued. "James wants to meet you. He has been asking questions for years that I have not known how to answer honestly." The meeting with my son took place the following weekend. He had my eyes, my mother's musical talent, and a thoughtfulness that reminded me of myself at his age. Our conversation was awkward at first, then gradually more comfortable as we discovered shared interests and mannerisms that genetics had transmitted despite our separation. "I always felt something was missing," he told me. "Like there was this hole in our family story that no one wanted to talk about." Over the following weeks, more meetings occurred. My parents, now in their 70s, reached out hesitantly. Their apologies were inadequate for the years of loss, but their tears seemed genuine. Forgiveness did not come easily, but it came not for their sake, but for mine. Sarah eventually admitted that she had discovered evidence of Jessica's deception years earlier, but had been too proud, too invested in her new life with Daniel to acknowledge it. Daniel offered no real apology, just uncomfortable silence and averted eyes whenever we were in the same room. I established boundaries with all of them, making it clear that while I was willing to build a relationship with my son and cautiously reconnect with my parents, I would never again trust them the way I once had. They had failed the most basic test of family believing in me, when everything seemed stacked against me. The relationship with James continues to develop slowly on his terms. He visits Amanda and me during school breaks, getting to know the father he was denied for 16 years. We make music together, his guitar complementing my piano, creating harmony from the discord of our past. Looking back on the 16-year journey from complete devastation to where I am today, I cannot help but reflect on how losing everything taught me what truly matters. The day my family chose to believe the worst about me, rather than trust in the person they had known all my life, was the day I learned that sometimes you have to completely rebuild from ashes. The relationship with my son grows stronger with each passing month. There are awkward moments and difficult questions, but also laughter and discoveries of shared traits that time and distance could not erase. When he plays his guitar, and I hear melodies that sound eerily similar to ones I used to compose, I am reminded that some connections transcend even the most painful separations. Amanda has been my rock, my partner, in creating a new kind of family built on honesty, trust, and the wisdom that comes only from experiencing profound loss. Our wedding was small but meaningful, attended by new friends who knew our story and supported our unlikely union. No one from my former family attended except James, who stood beside me as my best man, bridging my past and future in a way I once thought impossible. The most profound lesson I have learned through all of this is the importance of standing in your truth even when no one believes you. For years I carried the weight of false accusations alone, my protestations of innocence falling on deaf ears. There were countless nights when giving up seemed like the only option, when the pain of loss and injustice was almost too much to bear. But even in my darkest moments, I refused to become what they accused me of being. I rebuilt my life with integrity, helping others recover from their own crises along the way. I found strength I never knew I possessed in the process of starting over with nothing. I have also learned the power of forgiveness without reconciliation. I have forgiven Sarah, Daniel, and my parents, not because they deserved it, but because holding on to anger was preventing my own healing. Forgiveness did not mean welcoming them back into positions of trust in my life. It meant releasing the power their betrayal held over me and moving forward on my own terms. Sometimes the family we choose is more valuable than the one we are born into. The friends who stood by me during my rebuilding, Frank, who believed in me when no one else did, and ultimately Amanda, who loved me enough to defy her own family. These are the relationships that saved me. They prove that genuine connection can emerge from the most unlikely circumstances if we remain open to it. To those of you watching who might be facing your own impossible situations, your own unjust accusations, or your own complete life collapses, I want you to know that rebuilding is possible. It will not be quick. It will not be easy. But you can create a life of meaning and purpose even after losing everything you thought defined you. What impossible situation are you facing right now? How have you handled betrayal from those closest to you? Share your story in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more journeys of resilience and redemption. Thank you for listening, and remember that sometimes your greatest strength emerges precisely when you think you have none left.